Welcome back, Guardians, to another Dream Team video. I'm your humble host, Meeson777. I am joined in the Dido discussion room with our two guests, Cranky Crab.
Good evening.
And Unknown Electro.
Hello.
Who currently has a chair in a chair. That's such a power move. I love it. All right, gentlemen, it's the start of the season, right? Brand new season, fresh. It's fresh in everybody's minds. We're kind of still in the honeymoon phase, and we have a pretty difference of opinions here. I would say I am firmly in the camp that I am really enjoying this season thus far. For me, at least, this has been, again, this is the honeymoon phase, so, you know, take this with a grain of salt, but this has been some of the best season that I've had in Destiny since they've changed over to this new, like, less content model for a really long time. Like, this is, in my memory, this is the best season I've had thus far. Cranky, where are you at in this season? You mentioned that you're kind of a little bit lower than that.
I would say mostly positive, so I don't know if you wanted to rate it numerically, but I would title it mostly positive.
Mostly positive. And Electro actually is not feeling too good about this season. He's been playing other things like, what have you been playing recently, Electro?
Black Desert. Free
Black
now
Desert.
for PlayStation.
Link in the description below. Raid Shadow Legend. No, I'm kidding. But you haven't been having that good of a time.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, there's some repetitiveness in this game that I feel like it just kind of drives me off and wanted me to kind of, not quit, but kind of just don't have
Take
the
a break.
motivation to get on.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. We're going to talk about all that here. This is Yeetcast number 11. Before we get too far into this, be sure to drop us a subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and be sure to check out the rest of the channel. Let's get into it. So there's actually a couple things that I want to go ahead and address before we get too much into the meat and potatoes of, you know, our overall opinion of the season. And I want to start out with something that Cranky has been personally affected with. Like, this thing might as well have called his mother a bad name, and that is the sprint cancel bug that is currently affecting controllers right now. It's been an interesting little experience.
Well, tell people what's going on, because not everybody knows what we're
Fair
talking
point.
about.
Yeah, fair point. Yeah. So, if you're on controller right now, with the recent release of the ability to remap your controller, which, by the way, might we say, before we get into that, fantastic. The fact that you can completely customize your controller, always a good thing. But the problem has come with that there is now a bug with the sprint button. So whereas before, if you were sprinting and then you mashed sprint again, which we do from time to time, you're blinking around, you're jumping, you're actually currently in sprint if you're jumping or boosting or doing other stuff. So sometimes you don't think about it, but when you're coming out, you're actually still considered in a sprint. If you press the button right now, if you press the button again, you'll stop sprinting. You'll just go to a normal strafe or a normal walk. So it can be difficult for certain players who have kind of conditioned themselves, myself included. I've caught myself a few times, who've conditioned themselves to press the sprint button maybe more than once after doing a certain action and have been stopping, just essentially just, like I said, walking in the middle of high dangerous fire areas, risking your life unnecessarily on things or more than you might need. And it's been interesting because some people are saying grow up, get over it, and some people are saying no, this shouldn't be a thing. Cranky, you personally, this has been the big thing that's been holding you back from an overwhelmingly positive review of this season, if I'm reading you correctly from the stuff we talked about beforehand.
It definitely ruined my first few days of Crucible. Yeah, and I think I had to sit back and analyze why I was pressing the sprint button more than once. And I think, like you said, when you change motion, so you go from sprinting to jumping and then landing, you feel like you need to sprint again, that's when it happens. But also for myself, you know, my PlayStation console is pretty old, and so are my controllers. And I have 3 controllers here, all of in different states of disrepair. And one in particular I stopped using altogether for this reason, is I would be sprinting, and without pushing anything else or interrupting it, my sprint would just stop. And I couldn't, and it was so bad that I'd initiate sprint, take the first step, and then it would stop. And I'd do that 2-3 times in a row. It was unplayable. Well, I developed a habit using that controller of mashing the crap out of the sprint button, and that seemed to correct the problem. So that was something that I carried over to other controllers and didn't realize it. And it took me 2 or 3 days of dealing with the frustration before I started to adapt. And now I can just comfortably click my L3 button and then hold forward, and most of the time it's not an issue for me. I adapted quicker than I thought, but that was really frustrating. And I guess it's easy for people who don't have that experience to just dismiss it, but I'm certainly not the only player this has affected.
Absolutely not. And it's funny you mentioned controllers because I've been in the process of trying to send back a SCUF controller because of exactly what you just described. My left stick, for whatever reason, just decides sometimes it just doesn't want to sprint. Like you described, it'll be the first step and then it'll stop. So I have to, what I've developed doing is like holding it down and then gently releasing the pressure a little bit. And it's really annoying. And I switched back to my normal controller, despite this being a lesser controller, quote unquote, because of that issue. So no, I can absolutely, personally, I can absolutely understand like where you're coming from, because it got to the point where it was so bad that, you know, it was just unplayable. Electro, has this affected your opinion at all? You've had, like I said, you've had a bit of a negative opinion of it. Has that played into that at all, or is that not really an issue for you?
For the cancel sprint?
The sprint cancel, yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed it when I've actually kind of like, or when you guys mentioned it, I noticed it, but it didn't really affect me at all because of the way I play. I kind of just sit in the back, and so I'm not really running that much. But when I do, you know, it's just like I only have to press it once, and
right,
just kind of catch up with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to be in close combat and kind of have to spam it a little.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I haven't really noticed it. But I have noticed it in PvE a lot.
Yeah, I noticed it more in
like,
PvE than in PvP as well, which is
why.
interesting. Yeah, I don't know why. I think it's because I'm not as conscious of what I'm doing in PvE. I'm just kind of like on autopilot, as it were. But if we can address this, there's other bugs we want to get to. This, as you saw from the thumbnail said season of bugs, because there's a couple different things that have been an issue, one of which we'll talk to. But Bungie is currently addressing this issue. In fact, on day 1 of the release of this, somebody posted it in the Reddit, and Bungie replied to it and said, yeah, we're aware of it, we're working on it. Obviously, it's not like game-breaking, but it can be extremely annoying. The analogy that I gave to the people who are saying, like, oh, it's not that big of a deal, get over it, it's like, imagine one day you got into your car, and instead of having to hold the brake pedal to stop, all you had to do was tap it, and then it would ease to a stop. It's not going to be a big deal, sure, but you're probably going to mess it up a few times just out of habit, right? And it could be dangerous in certain situations, right? Especially in those kind of knee-jerk reactions where it's like, oh, shoot, you know, you need to slam on the brakes, and there you go, you know. So it's an issue, clearly, and it's going to be interesting to see how Bungie addresses it. Another bug that has seeped its way in is in Trials. I don't know as to the exact error code, but apparently, I think it's like honeydew or something like that. Apparently, if you go flawless, you want to hear about the ultimate blue ball. You go flawless, you try to load into the Lighthouse, you get honeydew error. Every single time. You cannot access the Lighthouse. Yep, it is completely unplayable. Which, maybe we should call this season of oof, but Bungie had hyped up Trials to be fixed, at least in some degree. They had reworked the token system, they had reworked the win system, they had reworked the bounty system, and...
Any news on cheaters?
What was that?
Was there any news on cheaters?
It's just an ongoing thing in general, but nothing specific.
No new technology to fight them or anything, though.
They said they're keeping their cards close to their chest, so nothing...
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I can't ask for more than that, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's completely unplayable. Like, it's not even like you might get in. Like, no, you can't get in.
No one's getting in.
Yeah,
Damn.
So as far as I'm aware, I could actually check my destinations right now, but as far as I'm aware, you're unable to access Trials of Osiris. They've disabled it, just like they would the Worm God back in the old seasons where you couldn't equip it. So, I mean, that's clearly a problem, and I'm wondering, I want to kind of pick your brains on this, guys. I'm wondering how much this is going to hurt Bungie, because this could be something that's, or Destiny, I should say, Destiny 2, not necessarily Bungie, because this could be something that's kind of swept under the rug, but this is another one of those things, just like with the Fellwinter's Like glitch, where it's like, how did this get in? Like, this is such like a big deal. How did this get into the game? I think you said before,
you feel, I think it was you, but it might have been one of our other guests that thought that perhaps Bungie has really spread themselves too thin. Because we see some of these things, these kind of quality control issues, and they kind of seem to, like, there's always something. Like every exotic quest, every expansion, update, DLC or whatever, there seems to be like significant bugs. So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, is it, so I guess your question was, how badly will this affect Destiny 2? I guess my best answer would be, it depends on how long it goes on for.
Fair, yeah.
How long does it take them to fix this problem? I mean, for me personally, as a almost 100% PvP player, I had just kind of given up on Trials because I wasn't having fun.
Which hopefully this was supposed to fix, right? Like the token farming and stuff was supposed to fix.
Right. So we're not supposed to be, the sweat to the max right out of the gate, have a chance to like even get to 3 wins kind of a thing. Like I'm not Frostbolt, right? Like I'm not carrying a team of AFK players to the Lighthouse. I'm not doing that. So I just kind of, there was no reason for me to play Trials. The loot was okay, but there was other good loot in the game. I had fun playing Sixes or Rumble or whatever, but Trials was not fun for me. It was just, so I forgot about it. I gave up on it. Like if some great news had come out and said, oh, this is why Trials is better, I probably would have jumped in. But it's me personally, and this is probably one of the harshest things I could say to Bungie, but I didn't come into this. I was indifferent. I didn't come into this season hoping or expecting to play Trials. I didn't care. Now, if it looks like this is going to go on for a long time, I mean, I don't know the depth of the bug. God forbid that it's hard and they can't figure out how to fix it. That would suck. But I think it depends on how long the bug goes on. If this, for me as a player, if next week sometime that issue's fixed, all right, then I'm going to give it another week or two and see what the community feedback is on Trials. And if it's improved, I might dip my toe back in there. Maybe.
Yeah, one thing that is kind of interesting is that this has a couple of kind of domino effects, and I don't know how much effect this was actually going to take. So, for example, I heard that Trials was fixed, and I wanted to try it out myself, but the problem is that I am so underlighted that I wasn't really going to attempt it, right? I'm like 10, 20 at best. I haven't been farming that hard, right? And I think I'd say a fair amount of players are kind of in that same boat where they're just kind of like, kind of on the fence about going in. And this kind of obviously firmly cements them in the camp of don't try Trials, right?
Well, it's locked, so you can't get in.
Right,
apparently.
Yeah, you can't get in to begin with. So I wonder if this will like bottle up the gates, as it were, cork the gates until next time and there's going to be a bunch of people, or if this will hurt that initial freshness that things have, because when something initially gets released, of course it always does better, and then as it goes on, it gets less and less popular, right? So I'm wondering if this is going to kick that down the road, that like, oh, it's back kind of thing down the road, or if this is going to actually hurt it because the people that would have jumped in this week aren't jumping in next week. But I want to get to Electro here. Electro, do you have any thoughts, opinions on everything that's going on with Trials that we mentioned?
Yeah, I could understand that sometimes developing a game and, finding bugs in your game could be pretty frustrating and hard. And especially for the community, kind of see it as an annoyance. But I understand that there's human errors, and it just, like as Cranky said, like it depends on the time zone when they fix their bugs. Because if we're talking about a week and they fix it, then yeah, it might turn out positive. But if it's just like months from being fixed, then yeah, it's gonna come out negative. And Bungie really needs to kind of fix those bugs ASAP,
right?
Before it starts dwindling down.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and let's talk about some of the stuff that we had mentioned earlier. Let's talk about why, Electro in particular, you have a very sharp opinion of this. Why you're not excited about this season. Let's start there. Why don't you explain that to us? You explained it to me earlier. Let's see if we can capture that magic again.
So the reason why I am not having as much fun as I want to is because of the activities, or I should say the new vendor that has been added to the game. The
Drifter?
Yeah, the Prismatic
the
Recaster.
Prismatic Recaster.
Mm-hmm.
The one where you could just turn in or you could convert your engrams.
Yeah, you can kind of customize what you get, right?
Yeah. So the problem that I had with it was, I mean, like, it's a good idea to have the customizable Umbro engrams, but the problem is that there's been like a repetitive mechanic with that activity. If you look back into the other previous seasons, say like your Speed Bunker from the season of Worthy and the season of Dawn Obelisk, they're pretty much the same.
Yeah.
So if we start with the Obelisk, you pretty much put Fractaline, upgrade it, get some loot, and then unlock, mods for that Obelisk. There's also bounties. But I do like what they did with the Obelisk, because the bounties, you could actually pretty much gain loot out of it, say like a Bygones. Whereas something like the Respian Bunker actually did not allow you to get loot from bounties. And with the Spin Bunker, you had to actually upgrade the bunker so that you could get loot out of it. But bringing back the Prismatic Recaster, it's kind of the same in a way, although it does have some new mechanics, such as the customizable engrams.
Focused engrams,
but it's just literally, you get bounties, you complete them, you turn them in, and then maybe you unlock some new mods, purchase those, and then upgrade a node on it, and then that's pretty much it. It's just been like a previous mechanic for the activity in these last 2 seasons, I believe.
They definitely seem to be trying to repeat the
formula.
Yeah. Like, I like the idea, but it just becomes repetitive the more times you use it.
Sure.
And so that's the only problem for me. I think what would be pretty helpful if, to kind of fix that problem would be to kind of add like unique game modes or just activities, which also drops like the same currency, kind of like Twisted Energy, I believe. You have to turn into the vendor. Add new activities, that way there's different sources of getting that currency, instead of, because actually I was reading the Reddit saying that there's actually 2 weekly bounties and the season pass, and that's literally the only way to get the Twisted Energy. And pretty much like, if you don't do them, like those 2 bounties, we're gonna be pretty much left behind. So there should be more ways to kind of get more of that loot. That way there's more loot being opened, instead of just, kind of having to wait. And the game modes that I was talking about.
Yeah, if I could jump in real quick. The thing that I've noticed, because I noticed that too. I noticed that the general core grind mechanic, like the loot mechanic, is basically the same, and I'm trying to figure out why I like it in this season rather than in previous seasons, because we've had previous seasons that have had a very similar mechanic, and I think it's a couple different things, which we could talk about. You were just mentioning right there how you would like to have different activities, which I agree with. I mean, we could talk about how the public event is basically just Gambit, right?
Yeah.
It's just a lesser Gambit. And we've had other seasons. I mean, the Seraph Towers weren't great. I'm not sure what it is about this season. I think it's having to do something with the accessibility of that. It's in the tower. I don't have to load into Earth to do it. It's just there with me. Second thing is that one thing I want to talk about, I'll mention it here, is that we have new roles of weapons to go for. Like, straight up, 5 new perks were added to the pool. Sympathetic Arsenal, Unrelenting, Killing, or Swift Wind, or Killing Wind, or something like that.
Wind, yeah.
Iron Gaze and Iron Grip have all been added to the loot pool. Obviously, the iron stuff is a Iron Banner thing, but just those 3 new perks, as an addition to the loot pool, have made it more interesting for me to try to chase something that is synergistic with those. Like, I'm a sandbox guy. Electro is an activities guy. I'm a sandbox guy. I like when the sandbox is unique. I got 2 rolls on the False Promise. One that had Underdog, Unrelenting. So, if your health is low, you swap faster, and if you get a double kill, you'll get your health back, which I thought was pretty cool. As a roll. And then I got Sustenance Rampage, which I know isn't unique, isn't new, but the fact that weapon rolled with it. And me being a PvP player, it's nice to be able to see some new, vendor drops from everywhere. Shaxx is dropping things like bygones and gnawing hungers and such, right? But I can definitely see the frustration of getting essentially the same loot grind over and over and over again. And to be fair, we haven't done the dungeon completely. We tried like the first part and got our asses kicked back when we were like 10-10 light.
Yeah.
So anyway, not to hijack your thought there. Do you have anything else you want to add to that before I throw it over to Cranky?
Just pretty much like game modes that should be added in that were actually pretty good in D1, such as like a Rift and Crucible.
I'd like to see
even
that.
just that
Yeah.
will like kind of encourage more players to play it because it's different than having to play something like Control, Classic, or just Survival, or just even Trials. It's just fresh.
Right. I
And-
mean, we can talk about an idea called difference of kind versus difference of scale, which is what I was kind of talking about in terms of the weapon variety. Like, Unrelenting is essentially another way of doing Rampage in a weird way. It's just inverted, right? If you think about it, instead of dealing more damage, you heal from damage, right? That's a difference in kind. Then one's not necessarily more powerful than the other. It's just different, right? And I definitely can see it getting a little old, especially in Crucible, because we've had basically 3 game modes, 4 if you count Trials and Elimination, that kind of thing. And that being kill the other Guardians, which can be summed up to Survival or Clash, stand on an area, Control, or kill a Guardian and then pick up their thing, which is Supremacy. But that's basically it. There's not really anything interesting about it. I would love to see some more interesting game modes in the Crucible, to say the least. We've got like Scorched, but that's so extreme, It's so extreme the other direction that it loses what makes Destiny fun. I would like to see kind of more game modes like that. Like, I would love to see a mode where you have like the Hive swords and you just run around just whacking people with the Hive swords, Like, get wild with it. Maybe put like a party playlist in there as opposed to the quick play playlist. I'd love to see something like Capture the Flag. I think that'd be a ton of fun to do too.
Yeah.
We need more variety. I mean, I talked about this on previous... I think I've talked about this prior. I don't think I've ever brought this up in a Yeetcast, but SRL. I was not a fan of SRL, but I liked that it was in the game because despite SRL not being the most polished, it was different. It was a completely different mechanic. It was a completely different portion of my brain that I was having to work in order to do it, right? It made the rest of the game feel fresh. I mean, we were just at sushi tonight. My mom absolutely adores ginger. I hate this stuff, but I understand why she enjoys it, because she'll do some sushi, ginger, cleanse the palate, and then go back, right? Cranky?
It helps. It gives you a fresh sense that helps you appreciate what was kind of stale or familiar.
Right. Anyway, any other thoughts to throw in on that before I move on to another topic?
Nah, go for it.
All right. Next topic, skill-based matchmaking has been removed. And yeah, that's been interesting. You're probably the first game that you saw on the playlist here of the games that you're seeing as we're going through this Yeetcast is the fact that I scored 58 defeats in a game of, I think it was just Clash. And these guys were clearly kindergartens. Like, you can look at their armor and see that it's like the torn, tagged, raggedy stuff that they're wearing. And I'm wondering what your guys' opinion on that. For me personally, the fact that skill-based matchmaking is an option in the more obviously competitive modes, such as elimination and competitive, right? Trials is kind of win-based, so it kind of counts, right? I think it's great. I like that. I like the fact that I'm able to get a match faster. The connections are generally better, and I'm able to shart on kids' faces a lot more frequently. I mean, let's be honest. That's what's fun, right? Getting kills over 40 in a game is fun, right? Because you're so. But I'm wondering if another player, if we can put ourselves in the shoes of a player who's a kindergarten, who's just getting into the game, who's the one receiving the shart rather than the one giving the shart. What they're feeling like. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I don't know. Yeah, I haven't. Okay, so I'm undecided about whether I like the change or not. I'm undecided. I honestly, I didn't have a problem with skill-based matchmaking. It seemed, I hate to be this guy, but it seemed like the people who were the most skilled were the ones that were complaining.
Sure, yeah.
Now, having said that, not you, not God, I can't think of what S is going by these days. I don't know what his name is, but any of you guys who are in the top tier, like you guys didn't complain, not in our group, but outside of our group in the broader community, it just seemed like, and maybe
sweat.
Yeah, maybe that's the problem when you're trying that hard all the time. I guess it's maybe it is exhausting. But for me, if I played in my own elo, if I solo queue, I was a god. I was the biggest fish in my pond. Where I would run into challenges is playing with the broader dream team and people like yourself who are way up there in the 0.1% in the world. Then I'd have good games and bad games, right? If I'm being honest, sometimes I would do awesome and sometimes I wouldn't.
Sure.
But I was okay with that. That felt like an environment that I was growing in. But if I were to try to put myself in someone else's shoes again, like maybe some of the popular YouTubers and people that are good at the game. If I'm putting myself in their shoes, maybe that actually isn't fun and that matters as well. Like we all can relate to the noobs and the noobs getting stomped and how that can be frustrating and chase people away. And that's an important conversation. It has to be part of the consideration of how we make the Crucible a healthy place for all of us. But there's the other side of that coin, and maybe they're a smaller percentage, but being a minority doesn't mean they're not important, right? The people at the top who are really good at the game, and if they're not enjoying it, that's probably not good for the game either. I don't know what the solution is. And I'm undecided on skill-based matchmaking leaving. So far, it doesn't feel like it has impacted my experience either way.
Okay. Electro, what are your thoughts on this? What do you think about the skill-based matchmaking?
It's very interesting that they would take off skilled matchmaking, but I'm kind of neutral with it because, yeah, I do see a problem with it, but I also do see like people enjoying it and not getting a lot of sweats. But from looking at the kind of like the blueberry perspective, it'll probably be really frustrating because, say, if I just invited a friend who never played Destiny before, and we got him to Crucible, and he would struggle like within the first game, it would probably kind of lose interest for him or her because it's just now that that function is off or taken away from Crucible, it's just gonna not be a really fun time for that person to play the game.
I have a question.
I have 2 statements to add to that as well. Go ahead, Cranky.
I'm just wondering if it's a question of duration. So just like we talked about earlier with Trials, how bad is the Trials problem going to be depends on how long it lasts. Maybe it's the same thing for any player, is how long does a frustrating experience have to last? And perhaps what also could be happening in the sandbox now is that, yeah, people maybe get stomped by somebody like you, drops 58 kills on them, and that sucks. But I think that's worse if it happens every game, 6 games in a row, 8 games in a row. In this environment where it's not skill-based, the lobbies could wildly vary, and somebody who just got 58 dropped on them may end up going into a match and then having a great match. I've had that. Yeah. I've actually had that now that I think about it. I've played... Where I've noticed it is when someone has come into my lobby and shit on everyone. Usually, even if I'm solo queuing, no one's dropping into my lobby and dropping 40-plus kills. That's not happening. But it has a couple times, and it's very obvious, and you go, holy shit. But it hasn't been every match that I've done. So maybe if people are getting their butt kicked occasionally, that's better than where we were, ?
Yeah, and that was kind of what I was going to say, too, is that there's... I think kind of 2 things going into it, because I think, like you mentioned, the duration, and I was actually going to make mention of the expectation. Like, for example, if somebody comes in and just destroys, just by himself, just destroys the lobby, myself included, it's like, hey, good on you, dude, and that's it. Like, as long as I don't get him every single match, that's fine, right? So I'm wondering if the noob going into it is already kind of has the expectation that they're not going to be good. Like they're kind of going into it like, I'm all right with getting my ass stomped because I know I'm not going to, and occasionally they get those games where they do well, right? Maybe they get a little bit better and they get those games where, because overall, I'd say it's like a 50-50 win rate. That's kind of what you're generally going to expect, right? A 50-50 win rate for this type of thing, right? And especially with skill-based matchmaking turned off on, I don't think it matters. And the other point I was going to make to that is that one of the things that I saw happen a lot is that I have a fair amount of highly skilled friends on my friends list, and you know what playlist I would almost always see them on when they are by themselves? Classic Mix.
Classic Mix, yeah,
Yep.
that was going to be my guess, yeah.
Yep, because they weren't trying to go into the skill-based matchmaking. So I'm wondering if it's one of those cases where Bungie just kind of like accepted what was already happening, where the majority of the playlist was already in non-skill-based matchmade anyway, and they're just like, you know what, screw it, let's just open it up to the rest of them, you know?
I think that's smart of them if that's the case. I think that one of the problems decision makers in all aspects of life run into is that they can't recognize when something's not working and change direction.
Sure, like a sunk cost fallacy sort of thing.
Yes, and so if Bungie was like, "Listen, we've tried this; it's clearly not working," and they made the change based on that, then good on them.
Yeah, and personally, might I say, I think I've mentioned this, but I think the change is great. Like objectively, I think the change is great because you want to queue into game modes that are big like this, where you don't have a lot of control over how the game is going without, like, you know, multiple stacks, right? Like 6-stack v 6-stack, something like that. You're most of the time you're going to get solos, maybe doubles every once in a while, maybe an occasional 6-stack, whatever, right? But it's chaos.
I just came up with a genius list. They should create a playlist that's called 4 or More.
The community has talked about this, but yeah, there needs to be like a team queue for this, just like how survival does, right? I would love competitive control. I think that would be cool, like a playlist where it is literally like 6v6, and both teams are trying their hardest.
Hard.
Yeah. I think that would be fun. Yeah. So, I mean, we could talk about that for a minute, but yeah, I think it's because generally speaking, you're queuing into those playlists. You're not queuing into, you know, competitive like comp or trials or whatever, and you are trying to just have a good time. Generally speaking, there's too much chaos. It doesn't matter what the skill-based matchmaking is on and off. There's just way too much randomness, right? And then the fact that it is still an option in the obviously more competitive playlist, just like by the nature of the playlist, it is competitive. Like Elim is by its very nature more competitive than Control every single way. In every single way, you cannot argue with that. It's not, you know, more competitive, just like the nature of it, right? It is way more risk reward orientated to try to poke that lane or do whatever you need to do, right? Because you don't get to get back up, right? And there's only 3 of you, you know. So I think it's a fantastic change. If Bungie just sticks with this, I hope they have the guts to stick with it, because I think this is great. I don't think that it has... There's obviously some negatives, like the lower end player getting crapped on, right? But that is so few and far between from the players who, even at their own skill level, even if little Timmy, who's, you know, 99 in the world, right? He's like bottom of the elo, but he's constantly going against people who are also in that elo. He's gonna struggle. He's gonna have a hard match. He might be sweating at his elo where we would just be dominating, right? That's something we have to keep in mind as well, right? So anyway, Electro, do you have anything you want to throw in on this discussion here?
No, I think that was great.
Okay, all right. I mean, well, applause. I mean, shoot. I mean, if that was that good.
You happy now?
That's the one clap. Thank you. Anyway, but I don't have anything else to talk about here, gentlemen. I was wondering if you guys had any other topics that were near and dear to your heart that you wanted to get onto the table. I did have the idea of talking about the future of Destiny, which I think we could maybe use as a closing topic. We are starting to get a little late on the time here.
Yeah, I think that, well, so much has happened in the last week or so.
Yeah.
I think there's probably room for 1 or 2 Yeetcasts out of this. I don't think we have to cover it all in one, but yeah, I would say, for my closing thought, I would say that I'm still optimistic. I'm not newly optimistic. Like, the hype's Bungie's always good at hype. Their trailers are always cool. It's always exciting. New classes, this, that, and the other, you know, pyramid ships, whatever. Like, they're good at the hype, but I've been through the hype cycle enough to know now that, all right, well, yeah, I'm optimistic, but I'm not hyped. I don't really get hyped anymore. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
That's fair. Yeah, no, I agree.
But I'm optimistic.
Yeah. Electro?
Yeah, I think this season's really great and it's doing well. It's just, I think one of the problems is just, you know, that activity, or I should say the vendor.
Yeah.
It's kind of repetitive. but I think everything else is fine. Like everything's great. Like I
Yeah.
think out of all the seasons, it's probably the best one.
I agree. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I agree with the repetitive nature of it, but I'm so in love with just the core gameplay loop of Crucible and the fact that I can experiment with so many. I took an attack helicopter build into a 1v1 today and had an okay time with it. I took a sweet business with a lion ramparts and a shotgun, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. So the fact that, like, there's no games that can do that, right? There's no games where you can be that level of weird and still have it feel this good. We talked about this before 100 times, right? There's a reason we keep coming back to Destiny. So I agree, though. I would love Bungie, if you're listening, you never are, but I mean, hey, maybe not this time. Drop us Rift or something. Like, give us something new. Gambit with blueberries is okay, but you know, something new would be fantastic. I don't know. That's really our wish here, I'd say. I don't think anybody is opposed to having a new playlist dropped into like the Crucible or even like a different version of a Strike or something. I don't know. But anyway.
I'd like to see capture the flag on a big map like in D1. Remember those big maps that would
That
even
would
have,
be
like,
cool,
Cabal?
yeah.
Can you imagine a map that wide open, that complex, and you're trying to capture the flag and run it back to your base? That'd be intense, I think.
Yeah. I'd like the vehicles to come back. I like the vehicle combat every now and then. I know it wasn't like the most competitive thing, but it's sixes. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Anyhow. All right, well, I guess that'll go ahead and wrap us up here. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining. If you enjoyed the video and you enjoyed these Yeetcasts, be sure to drop us a subscribe if you want to hear more of this. We do Destiny content 3 times a week at the very least, and we try to make it as best we can for you. Drop us a positive rating if you enjoyed it so that we know to do more of this, and let us know in the comment section down below if you have any thoughts on the current season. Thank you so much for joining. Bless your faces, and deuces.
Goodbye.